Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, baby. Hi, everyone. Someone stabbed me in the heart today, everyone. Someone named Louise in Richmond stabbed me in the heart today, everyone.
Louise from Richmond.
Louise from Richmond. Sounds like a Paul caller.
It definitely does. Definitely does.
But she's like, no money for you, my man.
That protest worked, I guess, because they bust down there to Richmond over the weekend.
So, boy, we got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with the Super Bowl because Eric Flack, who's been kind of all over the stadium stuff and had an interview with Ted Leonsis last week, is going to join us at 3:45. So I think it'd be best served to
340,
just 340. 340. So so we can so before we get to him, we'll lay out everything on Trouble in Tedland at 3:20. So I might as well take some time to talk about the Super Bowl here. But if you don't know, the first it's not steamrolling to happen in Alexandria did just happen, which anybody who's ever seen any of these things, none of them come easy. I don't think it's over, but I'll lay out what I think happened, and I think it was a massive miscalculation, not only by Ted Leonsis, but by the governor of the state of Virginia as well, to make a deal after an election where you have split government, and to think that they were just going to go along with everything that you just put out there if you can't make a case that it is so obvious that's in favor of the residents of the state, that you're making a massive mistake. But it's just a leap of faith. And so we'll lay out everything that happened today, which was the bill to get his Potomac Yard thing is DOA in the Virginia Senate. And they loudly and seem to enjoy telling them it's not happening today. So we'll see how Ted and Glenn get their ducks back in a row, and I'm not sure they can.
Here's the thing, like, you and I talked about this, how fast that thing moved, how fast a presser was announced, how fast it was coming, like how fast it happened, and then it was the quick blowback of the city going, whoa.
Wait a minute.
Here's the money. Here's a big chunk of money. Yeah. And then the other one that I thought was like, oh, they really don't know what they were doing. This one, the head of Metro goes, not a single person talked to me, guys.
No.
When you know how the traffic is in that area.
I'll lay it out.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll lay it out in a little bit because I have a lot to say about it.
Yep.
And I feel like not being a politician, but understanding, living here my entire life and being in the media cycles and understanding what happens when you put something out there that isn't like a certainty, is that people typically push back hard.
Yep.
And he found out the hard way today.
Here's the other thing, too.
And he also, for some reason, thinks everybody was just going to love the idea from the get-go, which was a humongous miscalculation, too. And I say that from a position of, I was one of the few who was on his side, actually, about it. It just in general with the plan, and I still am, actually. But I'm not surprised today, because you're going to run into resistance, that he didn't test the waters of the resistance before just putting it all out there and basically saying, I control this and you can't stop us. Is kind of the attitude he had.
Yeah.
And then, the blowback seemed to surprise him personally, which I'm also not surprised by. And now his heart is aching today because it doesn't sound like he's going to get what he wants.
What I didn't understand is you and I always loved to go with the perspective of how you do things sometimes, no matter what you feel on one side or the other. And you and I were both flabbergasted of the way the pushback was coming back from him in Monumental. And it was like, you guys need to actually morph a little bit here, because if you just kind of morph yourselves a little bit, you can angle this in a way that everyone's not going to maybe not be on board, but will take it a little bit better. Like I said, when he did the overlay of how much more land was going to be out at that spot than he had at Capitol Arena, I said, you should be leading with that. Yes. That you're going to get something that you literally cannot get in the city anywhere else.
This is why this is good for everybody, and then it was not just me.
Right. And then, like I said, we've talked about a bunch, where he was doing the same thing that national people were saying of, it's only 3 or 4 miles. When if you live here, you know that's not just 3 or 4 miles.
Yeah, no.
It was very,
they never got around what the chief complaints were going to be, and they were obvious.
Yeah.
And then, when I found out he never spoke to Metro, never spoke to the airport authority, didn't speak to a lot of community leaders before even doing this. And I get it. You want to try to push this stuff through and it's need to know basis. But this one was a little too big.
Yes.
And he and the government he and Glenn Youngkin had a handshake deal. And he goes, well, the governor's basically earmarking this and basically saying, I'll sign it, wants to do it. And they didn't talk to the newly elected leadership in the Virginia State House. And that's what they basically said back to him. You haven't talked to us about this once, pal.
Right, exactly.
So you think we're just going to bequeath you things because you're Lord Leonsis? Like, what are you?
Yeah.
Who do you think you are, basically?
Not to mention, too, then the very fast, almost like cartoonish way of them trying to roll things back. Like, oh, well, you can park at the airport and then take the metro, or you can take the water taxi that will eventually be like.
My favorite was it'll make traffic better. Yeah. And when I went, that's the wrong answer.
He wanted to be the solution.
Wanted to be the solution. That's not.
That doesn't happen in the city. We just live with it. We just live with it.
That's fake news, Ted. That's not the case. So we'll talk to Eric Flack about this, because he actually got him to talk to him about it. He was one of the few people that's gotten him.
He did the
since
rounds.
This happened.
I found out after that one, he did the rounds on like all the stations. He just didn't say anything really like newsworthy from one towards the other.
Just didn't get out.
It got amplified more from Eric's point of view, because Eric has been behind all of the stadium stuff.
And he got him on camera.
Got him on camera. But he was on a couple other ones.
The cast line was, well, I remember when he did that, and I went, what does that mean?
Right.
Because, like, what if this doesn't happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, what do you mean by that?
Right. He was on, I think it was NBC4 Thursday, because NBC ran a piece where they were interviewing people busing down to Richmond. And you want a Paul call. There was one guy that was like, I don't call him Ted Leonsis anymore. I call him Ted Snyder.
Oh, here we go.
And so I was like, oh, this is way louder than I thought it was about to be. And that was the people going down to Richmond. So
tell me more about this Dumfries location, sir.
The Dumfries Wizards.
Boy, we've had some seed changes here lately. All right, I'll get more into it in a bit. Let's start with Super Bowl last night. And let's start with the headline, which is the Niners took the ball first in overtime by choice.
Yep.
And admitted afterwards some of them did not know the rules. Mm-hmm. So that's bad. Okay.
Kind of inexcusable.
On the second part, well, Tony Romo didn't know the rules either. Well, but on the second
also
part,
inexcusable in its own category.
Beyond inexcusable that he would tell the largest audience on earth he didn't know the rules to the game.
Right, exactly.
There was a little one like in the early part of the game where I saw a bunch of people tweet about this, because and not that I would notice this that much. I mean, everybody watches a lot of the Chiefs because they're on so much.
Of course.
But I guess Creed Humphrey had a bad year snapping the ball, and he had a low snap to Mahomes.
Okay.
And Romo out loud said, you don't expect that from Creed Humphrey, and every Chiefs fan was like, you obviously didn't watch any of our games. One of those things.
Yeah.
It'd be like saying Cameron Cheeseman had a bad snap. Who would have seen that coming? And you're like, well, that's every week. Yeah. And it started in training camp. And if you actually paid any attention to the game you were calling, you would have known that. It was obvious. So it was little ones of the complaint of Romo not doing the preparation. And this is the Super Bowl. You would have thought he would have watched every game. You would have thought that.
I think it finally came together last night when he made the overtime flub up. By the way, I was at a Super Bowl party last night, and I had to tell everyone no, he's wrong. And they're like, the announcer is wrong? Yeah. Yes. He is wrong here. They cannot win. The Chiefs will get the ball back no matter what happens here. And they're
this is a new-ish rule.
Okay, yeah, right.
This rule was not actually implemented a few years ago. It just hadn't come into play yet.
And off of the long snapper thing, I said, I finally get it now. Romo is a pretty good announcer and can kind of wing it, but he does not mainline it like everyone else in the sport. It became apparent last night that it was you had 2 weeks to prep for this thing, and you were screwing up a little bit, but you big enough screw-ups that it's you were not preparing the same way the rest of us prepare to watch this sport or mainline the sport like we do. And granted,
I can't even begin to tell you how much film I watch of the other team that I'm not even going to talk about, because I do a local broadcast.
Yeah.
But I feel like I need to know everything about them. And if I don't know everything about them, because there will be a scenario in the game that I need to explain, and I never know which one it's going to be. But if I don't know everything about them, or as much as I possibly can, I'm not doing my job. And on that level, to be caught with your pants down like that, not knowing the rules, come on. I mean, give me a break. Come on. Anyway, so let's get to the decision, though. All right, I'm going to go full Rivera on this one. And I'm not trying to be a hot take artist, but when they took the ball first, I didn't have an issue with it at the time. And I knew it would be a controversial thing to do to give Mahomes the ball second, because you saw what happened.
Yeah.
And he's done this too many times. And the outcome, of course, makes it look like a really stupid decision. And I'm not going to absolve the team for not knowing the rules. That also is dumb. And, I would also say to the 49ers, don't say that out loud. Like, it's just a ridiculous thing to admit.
Yeah.
But like that's I'm not absolving of that. To not know what the rules were is really dumb. But outside of that, on the decision to take the ball first, like, keep in mind, the Chiefs had just walked down the field and scored. Yes, it was a field goal to send it to overtime, but they did. But if you go with the Rivera theory of our defense might be a little gassed and might actually need a break here, and we're both getting the ball either way here, guys. We're both doing it either way here. You know, I actually, when they did it, I went full Rivera of, okay, you know, like, I don't have a problem with this. I get the risk because you don't want him getting the ball second. You know, I understand that, and it bit them because they didn't score a touchdown. But I understood, like, and maybe they weren't thinking this way, but the fact that the game ended on the Chiefs having a very long, arduous, 2-minute drive that was frenetic, that got them down there, to give the 49ers defense a breather for a minute as they get into overtime and tell your offense, go win the game for us, or at least put us in position to win the game for us. I actually didn't, in real time, I didn't have a problem with that decision as much as everybody else did. Now, after the fact, it looks really dumb because they lost.
Yeah.
So it looks really dumb. But knowing that both teams were getting the ball, and maybe they didn't know, like, it's possible they didn't know that scoring a touchdown there wasn't going to effectively end the game. That's possible. I actually didn't have a problem with the decision in real time. I didn't.
I think I'm going to go a different direction, but I agree with you. I think it was better to let Purdy try to score first than have Purdy try to answer whatever Mahomes had to do. Because
I think if the Chiefs went down and scored a touchdown, game's over.
Yes, because I think then it's all on Purdy, and Shanahan was getting pass happy too. He was letting them throw, which I thought was fine. But
Purdy was getting paler by the second.
Yes. Yeah. And
it was happening.
And so I thought it was, the
Chiefs even admitted this afterwards. We're letting him throw the ball.
Yeah.
Because he started, you could see it finally was kind of weighing on him a little bit.
Yes. And so I thought better to let Purdy draw the line, and then you try to catch up to whatever the Chiefs do. And if they score, they score. But Purdy was going to be dead in the water if the Chiefs score a touchdown. He's going to throw a pick, and then all of a sudden you're breaking that dude for an entire offseason. So I'm with you. I just thought it was a different reaction here. If they had, I don't know, they had Brady or that that level of quarterback, then I think they take the ball second. But because it was Purdy, that was the difference, and you take the ball first.
Yeah, I think so. The other, there's two other things. I'm going to spend a lot of time in the 4:00 hour, talking about all of this, but there's two other things, and I think this is just worth saying, and everybody's saying it today, and I'll reiterate how I feel about it. Pat Mahomes is the best quarterback I've ever seen play. Period.
Yep.
I know his numbers aren't at Brady's yet or some of the other greats of all time, but he is singularly, in my opinion, the best quarterback, at least to this point in his career, that I've ever seen. And it's playing itself out right now where you're seeing an all-time great. He's Michael Jordan. He's Tiger Woods. He's an all-time great. He's Tom Brady. He's Joe Montana. Whoever you want to pick. He's one of these people. So it's so easy to find things wrong with what the 49ers did and not just sit back for a second and go, you know what? Like, this guy is so particularly special, so unflappable. He almost needs his teammates to let him down to lose. And when push comes to shove, and they don't even have the best team out there, they didn't have the best team they've had in these 5 Super Bowls that they've been in, or 4 Super Bowls that he's been in, he still is able to will them in a way that is extremely unusual, and I think it's worth celebrating. And this is less about what Kyle Shanahan did or the decisions that were made, and I think more about two things that occurred here. One that I think is obvious, his greatness, and the one that really I think is not underrated, but I don't think the casual fans know a lot about. Anybody who's driving around listening to this will probably agree with this. Steve Spagnuolo ran what might have been the best playoff run defensively of any coordinator I've ever seen.
Statistically, it was.
It was incredible.
Yeah, let me find
it was incredible. They took on the wrong teams every single week, and he beat all of them and held them below their averages every single week. He completely shut down and got the Ravens to play in a characteristic way that they're unaccustomed to. The Bills could not score when they needed to, and the 49ers were literally, outside of the first drive or so, if it wasn't for that fumble, things might have gone differently. But They could not move the ball consistently, literally at all, at any point in the game against them. This guy dialed it up every single time. It was perfect what he had. And this happened throughout the playoffs. It was maybe the best run I've seen from a defensive coordinator in the playoffs in a very long time. They were flat out amazing on that side of the ball with what I would call very few like Hall of Fame caliber, crazy, like Chris Jones is a ridiculously great player, but they don't have a lot of other ones out there that you would look at and go, well, it's because they have the Legion of Boom or they have Micah Parsons or they have Lawrence. They don't actually. They have good players, not great players. Trent McDuffie's turned into a clear-cut number one corner. Name the other players on this team outside of Chris Jones that you go, oh, those guys are amazing. It isn't personnel, it's scheme. And they've done it the hard way, and he might be the MVP, honestly, because the way that they went through the playoffs, winning the games they won and how they won them, it was really, truly an amazing run by them.
Kevin Clark, who does a show on the Manning Omaha Productions, he had this. He didn't have the exact stat, but he said it was the toughest playoff path ever by DVOA standards.
Yeah,
they played literally the hardest path of all time. And he added, and this is, I quote retweeted this with the expletive, it was the most flawed team of the Mahomes-Reed era.
I think it was one of their better defenses.
No, I agree, but when it comes to Mahomes and Reed in that offense, we saw it all year. Only scored 17 against Baltimore. Like, they were not clicking.
They averaged 21 points this year per game.
And
that is like middle of the pack.
Right.
They were not really actually explosive on offense. And there was a lot of reasons for that, but like they weren't very good on that side of the ball.
Right.
And they certainly weren't consistent. They just have Jesus is playing quarterback, and at the end of games, there's nobody I've ever seen better than him.
Right.
Him or Brady. Name them. Or Joe Montana. That's it. That's the list, really, at the end of game. There's nobody more clutch than him.
Correct. And so basically what I said was they basically effed around and won a Super Bowl with their worst team of this era, and the defense made up the difference.
Last year, their defense wasn't good.
Yeah.
And they won.
Right, exactly.
Their defense wasn't good, and they won.
They scored every possession that second half against the Eagles last year.
They had to score every possession, and then people always say, like, this year they didn't have any receivers. Name the ones from last year that you liked.
Right, exactly.
They didn't have... Tyreek Hill wasn't on that team last year either.
That's right.
So... like, it's pretty remarkable. So I think those are the two truisms to me. Mahomes is the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. And I don't know whether he will put up the stats that Brady did, because he's got a long way to go to get to that.
Sure.
And he's going to need a lot of help to make that happen. And he's going to have to stay healthy, which hopefully will happen, because he doesn't care about putting his body on the line.
Right.
So
he picks his spots, though. It's not like he's reckless.
He does. And I hope he has a really long career, because I'm into greatness. And I think we're witnessing it. Like he, in my opinion, is better than Brady. He's so much more multifaceted. And the way he goes about winning the games, it's not by design. He's got a feel for it like I've never seen. I've never seen anybody like this. Him and if John Elway won Super Bowls, it would be him and John Elway. John Elway was the same thing.
Yeah.
Like this multifaceted, crazy, ridiculous, accurate runner. And then all this, but his teams failed him late in the seasons in the 80s before he got around. He was old and they became a rush offense and he actually won. This guy wins anyway with flawed teams.
Yeah, right.
He's a cheat code.
By the way, it's not getting enough run, but the fourth down quarterback run play was like, I mean, that
incredible call.
Yeah, like no one's really talking about
absolutely incredible
but it
call.
was so money, and he didn't even get popped for it.
That was an incredible call.
That was maybe the play of the game right there.
The touchdown call for the win was a ridiculous call.
Yeah, it was awesome.
When I forgot he was back on that team. Yeah. They hadn't used him since he fumbled in the red zone 3 weeks earlier.
Right.
They had Andy Reid's had this knack
for
a long time.
Super Bowl. Yeah. That was my takeaway after the game.
I know. They had the two best calls were in the most pivotal moments of the game, and they both were perfectly timed. And then for Spagnuolo, I mean, he brought 6 on those guys multiple times in leverage downs.
Those Greg Williams style, the way he was just getting after it last night.
And I saw some of the Chiefs players say afterwards, we weren't scared of him throwing the ball. And I'm sitting there going, I think you should have been, because actually, like, I don't like your matchups with Debo and Kittle and those guys. But think about it. Debo had a nothing burger game.
Yep.
Kittle had a nothing burger game. They were totally shut down. McCaffrey on the ground was probably not utilized enough, but still, like, they limited him to whatever I think you can. He's an all-time great. So, like, they limited him to, I guess, whatever they could. I mean, honestly, like, this run defensively, and I think like Chris Jones is a really, really, really high-end player. There aren't many others on that team like that. And schematically, they were just on it. And what a run. To win in Baltimore, to win in Buffalo, to beat Miami, who was skidding right at the end, but was prolifically scoring points the entire year. And then to go there and basically shut down San Francisco. They had the hardest run that I've seen in a long time. They earned it with their worst team.
Yep.
It's really amazing. It really is.
It also, just to bring it all the way back around to what we talked about, it's all about the details, too. Like, did you hear Chris Jones talk? So we heard about and we just talked about with the 49ers, how they said they didn't know the overtime rules. Yeah. Did you hear what Jones said?
He said they had talked about it for weeks.
Not weeks, preseason.
Preseason.
That Andy Reid had taken time and said, hey, guys, these are the new rules. If this happens...
But it's only in the playoffs.
No, of course.
That's the amazing part of the whole thing.
And he actually said... If the
regular season is no different. If you score a touchdown when you get the ball first, the game is over.
He said that Andy Reid was already saying in preseason, guys, if this happens in the playoffs, not only do we want the ball second, we're going for 2 every time. Yeah. He said, I don't care what game it is, because obviously it's all the playoffs. He said, we will be going for 2. We'll go for the win if we score second and they score a touchdown. I mean, the fact that Reid had that button, like those are the little edges that make the difference between winning and losing, and that was one of the differences last night. And
the funny part was too, I felt like Andy was off his game a little bit early. Like there were a few things that happened where I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like
Travis Kelce getting in his face.
That was weird.
I don't know what that was about.
I hope Kelce is right and it is mic'd up in some way, and they eventually let out what he said to him because that was crazy. Yeah. But the other one, there was a moment in the game where Kelce caught a ball, and it looked like he got a bad spot.
Yeah.
And it should have been a first down. It was 3rd and 1.
Yeah, exactly.
They called it 3rd and 1.
Yep.
And it looked like a bad spot. And they didn't challenge it, but they burned a timeout. And I'm like, well, if you're burning a timeout, you might as well challenge the spot. You're losing the timeout either way. But they didn't do that. And then it looked like they got another bad spot on the 3rd and 1 run that set up a 4th down, and they didn't challenge that either.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Andy, what's going on, buddy? You checked out? Like what?
Right.
What are you doing? Because it's unusual for them to miss anything.
That's right. Yes,
they don't beat themselves.
Yeah, they're so buttoned up.
They don't beat themselves.
Yeah,
I know, it was amazing. All right, we'll revisit the Super Bowl at 4:00, but Eric Flack's going to join us in about 15 minutes. So let's lay out what's going on in Virginia today. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, in about 15 minutes, Eric Flack from WUSA 9 is going to join us. He was really the first to get an in-person interview with Ted Leonsis last week. And there was a major takeaway quote from that interview, which was he said the die is cast with I'm moving to Virginia, was basically his point. And then today, one of the leading senators, a Democrat, basically announced in committee today that the bill to move forward with the Potomac Yards project is dead, and described in great detail on Twitter and to committee that Glenn Youngkin and others negotiated something with people who aren't in office anymore, and they have not been negotiating with them, and they don't like where the negotiations are, and this is done. And could it be revived? Yes, like anything could possibly happen. But as of right now, this project that was supposed to happen is not being approved. And is it occurring?
Yeah.
And so I can't wait to talk to Eric about, because I want a little more context on the die is cast, because we asked this last week. When he said this, I go, what if it doesn't happen then? What does he mean by that?
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't get the property to build what he wants to build, because they were asking for $1.5 billion to be handed to them, if they don't get it, then what? Is he going to threaten to move the teams? And I can't imagine he would, because where are they going to go?
That's right. And
Ted, you think people don't like you now. Just even utter even a hint of that and find out what happens. And it's F around and find out on that one, buddy. Okay? Don't even, I said this when he put that plant thing in Sports Business Journal, Washington's Business Journal, and he wrote, they were like, he hasn't threatened to move the team. And I go, really? He hasn't. Is that right? He hasn't threatened to move them. Oh, right. Okay. Wait, I didn't know that was a threat.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you
for pointing out he's not going to move the teams that are widely supported here in a major market that have a history here. You're celebrating the 50th year of this team, the hockey team. And the basketball team had a great year in 78. Like, are you kidding? First of all, neither one of these leagues I think would be even want to have a discussion about it.
That's actually what I go to first.
Come on.
Adam Silver and Gary Bettman
Give me a break.
would both push back, and Silver would go, You have a NBA team in what is one of the hottest areas for basketball in the entire country. They haven't been successful, yet you still sell tickets somehow. You're not going anywhere.
They're going anywhere.
Not to mention capital of the
Move them where?
Capital of the free world. You're not going
I'll
anywhere.
go to Las Vegas. No, you won't.
No, you won't. That's an expansion in LeBron.
Yeah, no, you won't.
And then with the Capitals, Bettman's going, you have a guy that's about to break an all-time record. You better not mess around and say we're going to move a team called the Washington Capitals anywhere else.
You may have heard that Utah wants a hockey team.
Utah Capitals.
The Utah Capitals.
Doesn't have the same ring to it.
We'll call them the Utah Go-Go. They'll play with the Jazz. So, all right. So what's realistic here? This is interesting. So it was pretty forceful what happened today. And the first reaction I had to this, one, I'm not going to change my positioning on this. I was for what he was doing. I understood where he was coming from. I also don't think it was that far away from downtown D.C. I never described it as moving out of the city. I'm with you that I don't think he messaged this very well.
No.
Like I think he
pivoted either.
He got very defensive as anticipated.
Sure, but something this
because
major,
he's very thin-skinned and he wants it his way and he thinks everybody just loves him. And when someone pushes back at him, he gets very angry.
But here's the thing:
it's a character trait of his. That's all.
What's crazy is I've said this whole time. It's felt like deja vu of watching the Redskins go over to Landover again. When in all cases, by the way, if you just win, no one's actually going to care what happens in the long run. If you win, like that's the number one thing. But I said it was like deja vu watching the command, when the Redskins moved to RFK was because everyone's kind of like, do we really want to do this? Do we think it's going to be okay? All right, we'll give it a chance. And they're watching it happen again going, nope, we're not letting that happen again. Yeah. And if you learned watching the Commanders of literally the last 3 or 4 years, when the fans get really outraged, you bend a little bit. And you change the Sean Taylor installation. And you change a thing here and there to satisfy people to go, okay, you messed up, but you're trying to make it right here, and they haven't done that at all in the last couple of weeks.
He needed to soften the messaging.
Yes.
Like when he said last week, we want to be a solution for traffic, when we're talking about a corridor that's very difficult to deal with. It has one of the 3 major airports and one road in, one road out from coming from the north, and it's not a wide road. Give me a break. Like that is a fair complaint about this. It shouldn't be the only thing that maybe stops it, but it's a fair complaint. When the head of Metro says this is the first I'm hearing of this, then you're not talking to the stakeholders. They should have been part of this conversation. I haven't heard a thing from the airport authority, and I can't imagine they're particularly happy about this idea.
Yeah. Well, they're also going, we're an airport. We operate no matter what the hell you
Correct.
do. We'll react to that when it happens.
Right. I mean, but like when all these people start missing their flights because the traffic gets backed up.
And they start picking the other 2 airports in the area, too.
I love going out of National because of the ease of which you can travel out of there. I am not going to take a flight at 7 o'clock from National. not on game day, guys.
Wednesday before Thanksgiving Caps game every year.
Yeah. No thanks.
You want
to
talk about gridlock.
It also was a tremendous amount of public money, and they can pretend it's not public money. It is public money. I don't know how they're going to raise it, and I don't know how they're going to pay it back. Everyone knows that's baloney in the first place, that we're going to pay for it one way or the other, whether it's through taxes or through the bonds, or as they kind of tried to downplay, ticket prices and sales and taxes and tariffs on everything we buy. The beer is going to be $20 in this place. I already know what this is.
Yeah.
Like, how much is it going to cost to go to your game? That's the question I want to ask Ted Leotes is, you already know what the projections are. All right, so you're not taking any tax dollars out to try to get this to go through. Fine, you take out these bonds. They need to be paid back. Who's paying them back? The quote-unquote entertainment and resort fee that you're going to charge me for walking on your hallowed ground in Potomac Yards. What's that going to cost me?
Yeah.
I already know what it costs to go to a Caps or a Wizards game now. I think it's an abhorrent price, honestly. Is it going to be more?
Right, exactly.
Is what? Is like the upper level going to be $175?
Possibly.
Right?
I mean, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, a beer and chicken fingers is $52.
Oh, that's about right, actually. Like you're probably not far off when that is right now.
Yeah, he's like, we have parking spaces. They're $380. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so that's what I want to know. And I might be exaggerating, and I might not, Ted, and you know that, which is why I want to talk about, okay, how are we paying this all back?
Right.
And none of these things I felt that they've been softened about. And then he tried to play a victim and be like, I can't believe I'm hurt. You're hurt. You're the billionaire.
Right.
asking for something that is unusual.
Right.
You're not Jeff Bezos either, and you're not supplying what is a new ecosystem of money by putting in your headquarters here. You're doing something that benefits you and the leagues.
Yes.
And I'm not against it. I'll go to your games there. I'm not against this. I understand why you're doing it. And I bet what you build is really, really nice and probably something I'll want to go to. And I get that. And I hate the ethical part of what will happen in downtown D.C., but I also understand that you feel like you've been left behind a little bit by D.C. city government, and I've been willing to criticize them for saying part of the reason why this is happening is because in and around his stadium, he's an anchor for people to come in and out of there. You're doing nothing to help him support him with all of the issues that are going on in and around that stadium. So I understand where he's coming from. But he hasn't handled it very well. They haven't messaged it very well. If they didn't think there wouldn't be pushback to it, then I think they were being naive at best.
Yes.
And part of it feels like he comes from a place of whatever I do, well, people like me and they're going to be happy with it. And in this case, they're like, no. And he started crying or actually getting angry.
Yep. Well, and I think
vehemently yelling back at everybody how they're wrong about his pet project that benefits him.
Right.
Come on, man.
And this goes all the way back to him doing the whole, it's only 3 or 4 miles. Like, no, that's what national people say. You're not supposed to say that. And what that brings it back around for me is we're all very protective of the major things in the city because we know how fragile it is. Yes. That when you lose that, you do not get them back. Like, that's what happens.
There's an ethical problem here that was the hardest part for me to get around. And I talked a lot about it. I said, I get there's an ethical issue with doing this, and that's hard to get around.
Yes.
And, that's the part that I want to hear what he has to say about it. And how is he going to try to help the city recover from what's going to be a massive void that he's leaving behind? But I understand all the other things why he's doing it. But he has not positioned this very well. And then, frankly, and I want to talk to Eric Flack about this, they got cart before the horse beyond.
Yep, right.
Like beyond. Mm-hmm. They clearly did not negotiate with anybody who would have a say in it.
That's right.
And here they are going, well, don't you want this?
Right.
And these people are going, not until you talk to what's in it for me.
Right. And figure out the major things like the traffic and the transportation.
Oh, I think there's a what's in it for me guy. Yeah. Have you noticed we have split government here? You haven't talked to us yet?
Right.
All right, Eric Flack next. Brainwashing Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. I want to welcome in Eric Flack from WUSA 9, who last week had a sit-down interview with Ted Leonsis before today's news from the Virginia House today, where a bill that was proposed to move forward on the Potomac Yard project to bring the Wizards and the Capitals, amongst other things, to Northern Virginia, seems now in real danger of not going through whatsoever. Hey, Eric, how are you?
What's up, Bram? How are you?
I'm good. Why don't you characterize what happened today in Virginia and what that means for this project?
When you do a bill of this nature, it's got to pass the House and the Senate. The bill to fund the arena in Alexandria has support in the House, but it does not have support in the Senate. Right now, it has actually growing opposition, especially from Democrats, and they stopped a procedural move. They stopped it from even coming in front of the Finance Committee, which would have to vote it out of committee to go in front of the full Senate. So the Senate Finance Committee said they had concerns, Democrats particularly. The leadership said they have concerns about the taxpayer portion of this, the risk for taxpayers. They're also frustrated with the governor, Glenn Youngkin, for what they say is a refusal to negotiate. And so they just said, we're not even going to talk about it. It didn't fail in a vote. It didn't get a vote. They just said, we're not talking about it. We're not even going to consider it. Hours later, Monumental held a hastily called a news conference, and they said, look, this is okay. The deal is not dead. We know we have support in the House. We believe we can get with the Senate, convince them to see the light, to negotiate. I don't know if they intend to change the framework of the deal. I don't know what Democrats will be asking for. There's a lot of parts. There are legislators in other parts of Virginia, not Northern Virginia, who say, "What about us? What about our part of the state?" And they're going to have to convince those people to get on board before this really gets revived. But Monumental continues to say, "We're okay, despite what seems like some really, really big red flags today in Richmond."
Okay, so you follow this closely. Where did you land on today's news? Is this, we're okay, Monumental, let's see this through, or are they in real trouble of having this thing completely go away?
I think this is trouble. Now, I'm not sure if it's trouble that they can't overcome, but this is really early in the process to hit a roadblock like this. I mean, they said what they had to say today, which was this is part of the process. But I don't think they could have ever expected, after 2 years of work, after that huge press conference, the announcement, the fanfare, all the interviews that Ted did last week, trying to get out in front of this thing, that they wouldn't even get a hearing in the Senate Finance Committee. I don't think the governor is helping the cause politically right now with some of his tone and rhetoric that is rubbing some of these more rural Democrats who represent more rural, less populated areas, rubbing them the wrong way. I would stop short of saying the deal is dead. And Monumental would say, it's not even close to dead. But they have problems that they are going to have to overcome. They're going to have to do it quickly.
What is the governor? I haven't followed that part closely. What is the government doing? What is the governor doing politically that is upsetting some of these Democrats?
I think he is not reaching out. He is basically hailing this as a slam dunk, pun intended, that is going to be a windfall for Virginia without, shaking some hands and kissing some babies along the way in the form of legislators to make sure they get on board. My reading of this is that they felt he put the cart before the horse a little bit and thought that he didn't need to really, shore up his support. And that I think there are legislators who are feeling like their support is assumed rather than earned. And they're taking a stand here. And which is why Monumental said, look, we're going to talk to the senators. We're going to talk to the Senate Finance Committee. We're going to show them the merits of this. We are confident that we can work together to make this deal a reality. They continue. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please finish your thought.
Last thought was they continue to say there's no plan B. In fact, they won't even say there's a plan A. There's only one plan. So, we asked them, are you Bowser's over here saying she's going to sue you today if you try to get out of the lease. She's saying she's still got $500 million on the table to fix up Capital One. Are you kind of keeping that in your back pocket just in case? They're like, nope, we're going to Virginia. We're going to work this out. You
got this quote from him last week where he said the die is cast, which is really obviously caught a lot of attention, which made it sound like we're moving because this is happening. And then this happens today. Did you follow up with what if this doesn't happen in Virginia? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. No, they won't even acknowledge the possibility. Today they let us speak with Monica Dixon, who has a fancy title, but she's way up in this project. She is one of the people who is figuring out the framework for this deal on behalf of Monumental. Very smart woman. And we keep on asking her, like, are you sure you don't have a plan B? Are you sure you're not going to at least keep this option on the table? Are you so confident? She says, yes, we're not even going to think about failure. Despite what happened, it's part of politics. This is no big deal. So, and then you have the legislators in Richmond who oppose us who say, we're not doing this. So I don't know. People are saying very, very different things. Monumental made themselves sound very confident that this was just a bump in the road. But they are not publicly, at least, considering staying in any way, shape, or form. The die is cast. Their major is declared, as Ted says. This is what they're doing. And they continue to believe that they are going to get a deal done despite what appeared to be a major, major development against them today in Richmond.
Okay, but if they're not staying and this doesn't happen, he realizes moving the teams is a nuclear option that is not going to go very well, correct? Are we going there with him yet?
Listen, I think one thing that you and I can both acknowledge is that, billionaires are just different, and how they think and what is going through their mind is kind of hard for me to say. But, listen, they are, this is the part I find funny. You got the mayor who is meeting with the press and media today saying, we're going to sue them, basically, if they try to break this contract. That clause to get out of the lease doesn't apply here. They won't get into their legal arguments, but they basically said, we're going to take this to court if they try to do it. On the same time, Monumental is telling me, well, the arena is actually not going to be done by 2027, which is when we want to pay to get out of our lease. So we would like to negotiate a 1-year extension to stay at Capital One Arena until our new home in Alexandria is ready, and then we can go. So, I mean, they're saying that the mayor who is threatening to sue them over leaving would ultimately be amenable to allowing them to stay at Capital One for 1 more year and collect 1 more year of revenue just to help them out, just to do them a solid. So they acknowledge that if she didn't go for that and the Virginia thing does happen, they don't have a home for 2028. Like, they would have to find a place for the Wizards and Capitals to play if the mayor wouldn't give them a 1-year extension to stay here, which I find hilarious, but it's fascinating. But that just gives you the mindset. You know what I mean, Bram?
Yeah. On the cart before the horse thing, I mean, this isn't surprising. This came, I know they've been working on it a long time, very quietly, and they kept it close to the vest, and then they unveiled it, and it was a surprise. But the governor and the mayor of Alexandria were on board, but there were a lot of stakeholders that were not. The head of Metro had no idea what was going on. I have not heard a thing from anybody at the airport authority, which this would obviously affect DC, Reagan National, if they were to do this from a traffic perspective and all of that type of stuff. So it does not surprise me that they did not talk to the people who won election back in November to provide a split government in Virginia. How did they not think there would be blowback here and not involve them in the conversations?
It seems like a huge oversight. It really, really does. And to think that they would work on this deal for 2 years, which they now say they have been, to when, you interview Ted, I interviewed Ted, and it's clear this was always the plan. It is clear that all the negotiations about potentially staying at Capital One, this was always the plan, is to go to Northern Virginia. He wanted his own arena. He wanted to start from scratch. That was always the plan. To think you're going to put all that work into that and not, make sure you had the politics locked up seems like a bad mistake at the least. And egregious miscalculation, at the worst. So, but we're here now, and they have put themselves out on this plank, and they have got to figure this out, because you're right, to put the toothpaste back in the tube with DC, woo, that seems. But it's also, they don't even want to. They aren't even saying they have any interest in trying. Which is why a team like the Commanders negotiates with 3 different districts at once, to make sure that they have all their ducks in a row. They put all their eggs in the Potomac Yard basket.
I know you got to go, and since you mentioned them, I did want to ask this. With all of this movement of what's happening, with the proposed move to Virginia, now the RFK movement last week in the House, what's just your general sense of movement towards finding a home for the Commanders?
Yeah, well, we had an interview with Josh. He said there are 3 sites. They've identified 3 sites. They're down to 3 sites. There's one in D.C., there's one in Maryland, there's one in Virginia. They actually know the locations. Obviously, I have sources, but the D.C. site is the RFK.
We know that one, yes.
Yeah. We can only assume that the Virginia site is Loudoun, because that was the only one that was kind of really still in play. It's the only space for it. We can assume Maryland is FedEx Field, probably, because the Oxon Hill site, which was considered it's just too problematic. And so they're moving forward on it. And I think there's going to be some movement as far as, he said he will have more on it in the coming months. So, timelines I don't think we know about, but I think, we went up to Philly and he's trying to build a new downtown arena there. I think it's pretty clear what he values in arena and stadium financing projects. And I think, he's going to look for a place that can benefit the community here in DC, because that's what he's trying to do in Philadelphia. And that can really kind of narrow down, kind of read the tea leaves about what sites he might prefer. But that process is moving along.
Eric, I know you got to go. Thank you so much for fitting us in today. I appreciate it.
You got it, Bram.
All right, that's Eric Flack, who you can watch on WUSA 9. He had the interview with Ted Leotis last week and now today. So, I mean, this is everything I've heard too, but he just reiterated they're going there. It's all or nothing to them, which is a weird negotiating place to be.
Yeah.
If he's going to run into resistance and they're not going to be able to pass this bill. Mm-hmm. So, and that's why I get nervous about, because even as Eric said, and I've dealt with a lot of billionaires, they are different. They think different. And I hope he doesn't even hint at doing something that will make him a villain for all time. You will not be, you want to talk about not putting toothpaste back in the tube.
Oh.
Hint for a second, you even consider it.
Right.
And
that's nuclear.
You're dead to all of us.
Yeah, no, that's land that cannot be used for decades on end.
Well, then you get the sell the team stuff.
Yes, correct.
Immediately and forever, and no one trusts you ever again.
That's right. And I guess what this brings me back to is how Ted consumes media. Ted pays attention to what's going on here. How you haven't learned with what happened to the Redskins, Commanders, football team, whatever you want to talk about it, and just not followed that playbook and gone a different route. It's so weird to me that it's playing out right in front of our eyes of what went wrong with the last franchise. But the one thing Dan Snyder never did was ever threaten to move. No. I mean, like, ever. That was never on the table.
No, and he's been trying to get out of FedEx Field for years. He's trying.
Right. And so
they wanted RFK. They couldn't get it.
Right.
It was stuck in red tape forever.
I think this is the weirdest part to me is I think smart people learn from other people's mistakes if they don't have to make the mistake first. And were you not paying attention at all to what's happened literally in your backyard? Like, we've seen it with other owners in other cities, but one's been going on here for over 2 decades, and you watched literal people, or you watched that literal fan base erode away and move to your teams, and you're not learning kind of why they started doing that. It's mind blowing, honestly. Like, in today's day and age,
and the whole he didn't talk to the people who just got newly elected that would have to earmark this to happen. What are you thinking?
Yes.
It's a hubris that's really astounding.
Right.
And this is why he's acting like I'm offended that people are upset about this, and we're not going to make the life hard for you, and this is good for everybody. But you're not even speaking to the key stakeholders. You're basically telling them, get out of my way.
Right.
For $1.5 billion.
Yes.
Of course, people are going to ask questions and may have pushback. And the fact that you didn't include them in the initial conversations, those elections happened in November.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
It's February.
Once again, I'm questioning the process as much as the actual decisions. Like, I can't believe we're at this point.
He and the governor seem to have had an agreement that this was just going to happen. Without talking to the other side. And you know what? Had the Republicans won the House and the Senate, it probably would. But because they didn't, it's split government. This always happens. Anything gets held up. And he didn't even bother to speak with them about it.
Feels very much like the George W. Bush mission accomplished banner.
Yeah.
Where it's like, are we done with the war?
Yeah,
because they only pulled out the troops last year. So
it's over?
It wasn't like, what are we doing here? That's what I think you and I's first reaction was. They're having a press conference tomorrow? For what?
Yeah.
Nothing's been signed.
This is the old Animal House line. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? No,
Quiet.
Nothing's over until we decide it is.
Be quiet. He's rolling.
Yeah.
You know what I want now?
Holy
you know what
cow.
I want? Because I love to collect just terrible pieces of memorabilia. I want monumental opportunity stuff. Send it to me. I want to file that away of when they tried to move to Virginia and it just fell apart before it ever went through.
We've had a lot of really interesting memorabilia popping up lately.
Yeah.
Some nice Capitals Potomac Yard stuff.
Yeah.
We got a crest recently that was really interesting memorabilia.
I opened up an old Redskins program for my parents' house in my storage unit, and Raljon was printed on the pricing.
Raljon.
And I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
It's actually in print.
There it
in
is.
a program. Fantastic.
Listen, I have the letter to the fans from Dan Snyder saying he would never change the name of the team.
Look at that.
That's a good one, right? We'll get back into the Super Bowl next. Bram, what's the show? ESPN 630 Sports Capital. Never mind me. Talk about your Super Bowl. Don't worry about what's going on in Virginia.
So I want to point one more thing out, just because the reaction to this has been appropriate, by the way. So when the mayor released her piece on the Post on Sunday,
she did.
And
I was going to read that today, but it feels
outdated at this point.
A little bit. Well, not anymore. I'll get to it tomorrow. We got 8 million things. It's crazy how many things I'm not going to get to today that we're going to get to tomorrow. But go ahead.
And so she did that, and I guess Monumental didn't see that until like the afternoon. The Caps are playing at 1:30, and all of a sudden there's a back and forth happening on Twitter while the team is playing, and it was very like
answer her immediately.
It was almost like
it's Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah,
like Muriel, you picked a bad day to put that out.
They could have just once again. I'm questioning all of the process here.
Yeah.
Of like
even the casual people who don't follow football are locked into football.
That's
today.
right. Like you could have said nothing, and you would have been fine.
Correct.
And it just kept amplifying because it was a back and forth of like, we are legally allowed to break this lease now and this year. And then, as Eric just pointed out, the arena wouldn't be done by the time they want to break that lease. Like, oh, man. Like, once again,
this is,
you guys not pay attention to how the other team screwed up every little thing along the way for the last 20 years and you're not learning from them? It's the most mind-blowing thing, I think.
I was going to pick apart Muriel Bowser's piece, but maybe I'll look at it tomorrow because the news is today that some Democrats in Virginia and the Virginia Senate have basically blown up this deal.
Yeah.
And as Eric Flack just put, he said, it's not over. They're not saying it's dead. They're just saying, you better come talk to us before we even put this up for a vote, because we're not even going to put it up for a vote, which makes it dead.
Yes, exactly.
These things are not easy to just do.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing felt very cart before the horse. But like when Glenn Youngkin, Ted Leonsis, and the mayor of Alexandria did a press conference together, well, I wouldn't even call it a press conference, did a reading of what's going to happen here to everybody in attendance and took no questions about it. I went, oh boy. Like,
and
their ducks must be in a row, because why would you do this and put yourself out there like that unless your ducks aren't in a row?
That's right.
And they forgot a couple ducks.
Well, and not only that, when you had the residents, like I don't even think the residents were as mad about the actual project happening as much as it was.
Not sure. I'm sure there's a bunch of people who live right there that are like, whoa.
Well, I think what was more and what rallied the troops, so to speak, was like, wait, you're doing this without even asking us? What do you like? What's the impact here? Tell us about the trans. Like, all people wanted to know were the answers to very simple questions, but major questions of where we live. Right. And when they were like, you're going to try to ram this through on us? No.
And it's $1.5 billion of public money. Like, I think if Ted came out and said, this thing is fully paid for,
right,
we're paying for it, then I think that's a different conversation where you go, okay, like,
can't be that mad at that. I mean,
correct. I mean, that's just not realistic. And then they're telling, like, he's going on and on and on about how it's bonds, it's not tax money. Somebody's paying for it. The bonds need to be paid back.
Yep.
How's that going to be paid back? And then you're like, you're going to pay more in tickets. Just not loudly. And I'm like, I already know what's going to happen here. You're gonna the surcharge on these tickets and your concessions and the merchandise, it's all going to go way up.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this the other day too. Well, I was like thinking about all of this. I'm like, it costs about the same to go to a Caps game than it does to a Wizards game, right?
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Yeah.
Why is that the case?
Right.
The player salaries are far lower in the NHL than they are in the NBA.
That's
in
right.
fact, it's not close.
That's right. Yep.
Like the salary cap, like Alex Ovechkin makes a fraction of what LeBron James makes.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
So
when you see NHL deals, you kind of laugh. Like,
well, they'll be like 8 years for $60 million, and then like LeBron James is like 8 years for $60 million.
What was who was that?
Brad's like what? Brad got like 4 for $250.
I think it was Michael Nylander, or not Michael Nylander. He was the former Capital. The other, his son for the Maple Leafs, who signed like, it was one of those deals. It was like 12 years, $110 million. You're like, excuse me.
I need to like look into this, but like, why does it cost the same to go to an NBA game when it does to an NHL game, when clearly what you have to pay the team is not even remotely close the same?
It's William Nylander, who's one of the best goal scorers in the league, plays on the Maple Leafs. Might as well be the Dallas Cowboys of the NHL.
Right.
8 years, $92 million.
Yeah.
Like, that's a joke.
It's a joke comparatively. Max Scherzer got that for 2 years.
That's right.
Basically.
Yes. And then deferred half of it.
Yeah.
And still getting paid by 3 teams or whatever the number is. Like,
I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, why would it cost the same to go to an NHL game as it would to an NBA game? because the payrolls are not even remotely close. The rights deals aren't even remotely close. Like,
I would venture to guess your average.
Possible?
I would venture to guess your average Capitals fan probably spends way more too in terms of merchandise.
I gotta look it up.
All that stuff.
I wonder what a ticket. I want to go to another city and look it up and see if that's the same. Like, are the Stars tickets and the Mavericks tickets the same price? I wonder.
I mean,
maybe they are. Maybe they aren't. You know. Are the Heat and the Panthers tickets the same price? Like, I wonder. I don't know.
So let's see. If you wanted to go see the Mavericks tonight playing the Wizards,
yeah.
Funny enough, the Mavericks get-in price for tonight's game.
Yeah, but I need to know what face value is. That's what I want to know. What is face value for a good Mavericks ticket, and then what's face value for a good Stars ticket? That's what I would need to know.
I'm just going to use SeatGeek just to give us an example here. The get-in price for tonight, Wizards not a great opponent, but let's just use it. If you want to sit lower level, it's going to cost you about. That's actually no. Upper level is kind of pricey. Lower level is going to cost you about $120.
Right,
actually a pretty good deal for the Mavericks.
They're good. They're good this year, but okay.
And then if we wanted to do
the Stars. But this is secondary marketplace. I want to know what the face value is of these tickets to go in. Are they actually on par with one another in other markets? Because that's what it is here with the Wizards and the Capitals.
I'm trying to see. Let's see. So tomorrow, funny enough, the Stars are playing the Hurricanes. And it's actually more expensive for the Stars.
The Stars?
Yeah. So maybe it's an NHL.
Maybe.
Okay. Is it an upkeep thing? Is it the ice, the Zamboni? Is it all the operations cost?
Maybe.
Pump an AC into the building, maybe?
What you can get for tickets.
It could just, I was going to say, it could just be your audience.
I mean, what's depressed their overall cap is their rights deals aren't the same as the NBA.
That's right. Right.
They don't get the same money as the NBA does in rights deals.
This is probably also a difference maker is in the NBA, and you know this too, we've talked about this. You have so many better seats in the NHL. You can probably justify making all your tickets a little more pricey.
Maybe.
Whereas with the NBA, there's a certain cutoff where you're like, that's a crappy seat.
I'm gonna look up Timberwolves and Wild.
Okay.
And I'm gonna see what the ticket prices look like.
Yeah,
I'm gonna wonder.
Probably a better call. As I said too, with hockey fans, I think hockey fans probably spend more money with the second they're in the door compared to NBA fans.
Why is that?
I always
drugs.
No. Go look at the crowds for both of those.
I don't know. They got a Hennessy lounge down there for the Wizards game.
No, they do. They do. I was talking about more about like what people wear and how they show their fandom. I think you have more NHL fans that wear head to toe Capitals gear than when you go to a Wizards game and a Wizards fan is wearing head to toe Wizards gear. Wouldn't you agree with me on that? Like, average Wizards fan dresses up like a night out, whereas like hockey fans are full blown fanboys, where it's like hat, jersey, everything.
I think we're now 70-30. Nobody's going to the Wizards game for the actual basketball game.
And so that's what I'm
They're
saying.
treating it like it's a club.
Whereas I think like the Caps release a new jersey and everyone goes, I need to have that. And the Wizards release one and they're like, I'm good. I don't need to have any.
The Wizards have also
stuff.
primed us for, with a few exceptions, they're not really a competitive team.
Yeah, that's true.
So you just like going to a basketball game and putting on your best fur coat. I mean, it's really like what it is.
Which we've seen literally in person.
Right.
So.
As far as a club scene, they seem to be on par with among things
People
that
love
are
to get up
worthwhile doing.
while they're playing.
It's ridiculous.
Who was the announcer?
Ian Eagle.
Yeah, Ian Eagle.
He's like, every time I come here, all people do are walking. I noticed it too. I'm like, everybody in these courtside seats aren't there for the game. They're up and walking the whole time.
Right, exactly.
Let me do a few NFL things. I'll get back into the Super Bowl. Mike Zimmer is apparently going to be the defensive coordinator of the Cowboys now.
That's right.
Rex Ryan tried to throw cold water on it yesterday during the pregame shows. Weird. There was a viral clip that popped out where, Schefter was doing his thing, just talking about, this is what we're hearing. And then he said out loud, to my knowledge, he hasn't gotten that job yet, which was Rex Ryan saying, I am talking to him, and actually said something honest. He said, I called Mike McCarthy and asked him to join that staff, and he claims that since he's been out of coaching, he has never done that once, but in this one particular case, he wanted to come back and coach this team, and I guess for 24 hours, they were taking it kind of seriously, and then once it was out there and in the cycle, Jerry had to make a decision, and they went with Mike Zimmer, so he is going to be the head coach or the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys.
I think you needed a better option if you need to fire McCarthy. I think that's probably
than Zimmer.
Yeah.
Or Ryan.
That's why Zimmer got it over Ryan. I think because if you have to fire McCarthy, you're going to take the next best guy in the building, and if you're not going to elevate Rex, then Who are you going to?
Well, let me ask this question about Rex when it comes to Jerry. Do you think he wouldn't hire him because he's a good interview and he'd get a lot of attention and, he's a good soundbite and Rex is not shy with the cameras and you'd start, and then, the Dallas defense is good. They got really good players. So,
Maybe.
Whether he's really good at the job now or not, they're kind of have too many good players to be bad. They're not going to be bad.
Right. I think another part of it could be, not only because of what you're saying there, another part of it could be he knows if this all goes sideways, he's gone after a year, and all of a sudden he's going to go on the air and talk about what went wrong for an entire year, essentially, for that team.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe Jerry's like, we just don't need to risk that. If they were close. They were close in terms of the interviews.
And I wonder, Rex, if he gets that job, it keeps him front and center.
Right. Yeah.
It keeps him front and center because they're a big deal no matter what.
Yes.
He gets interviewed a lot. If they let the coordinators talk, although I never saw Dan Quinn doing any interviews. I wonder if McCarthy shuts that down there. Sometimes the coordinators talk, sometimes they don't.
Might have just not made enough noise, to be honest. I mean,
maybe
some of that stuff just doesn't permeate outside.
Some teams do it, some teams don't. Like we had it where Bieniemy and Del Rio spoke every week. That Ron allowed that to happen. But there are other places where the coordinators don't talk.
Yeah,
you don't hear from them.
Jack shouldn't have talked.
Well, that's a whole other different conversation.
That guy said the same thing every week.
Yeah. Well, not every week.
Well,
every once in a while.
I wasn't even referencing that. I usually like to reference the
every once in a while he does mention something, and you go, "Well, why don't we stick to football?"
Wasn't going to mention the dust up, but no, I meant more like your eyes joke sometimes is like, if we played the one from last week, it would still be the same questions and answers with that guy. So,
I guess for Zimmer, I guess he just wants to coach again,
right?
And I don't really think I understand what Jerry's doing here. Like, more and more, it really kind of felt like they probably should have got a new head coach. Not that I think McCarthy necessarily deserved it, but they kind of blew it. Sure. And he was already on thin ice because Jerry leaves them on thin ice all the time.
Yeah.
They lost their primary coordinator a year after the other one was kind of booted.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Dak had a good year. He was calling the plays. They have to extend Dak. They have no real choice there.
That's right.
They have no choice. Their cap situation screams they have to do something with Dak. You probably saw over the weekend they were talking about they're going to approach him early because they have to. They have no money to spend in free agency. They can't do anything until they free up. Unlike us, we are the opposite of it. We're sitting pretty. We could actually make more cap room than what we have, depending on what we decide to do with some of the players on our team. They are currently over the cap. It's because Dak has a $60 million number. They can't cut him and they can't trade him, even whether they'd want to or not. So they have to restructure with him, which means he is going to be back for at least a couple of years. Maybe they feel like it's just better served because it wasn't like he was bad.
Well, I think
he wasn't bad.
I think at the most basic decision making for that was, I think he had one of his best years.
Yes, he did.
And don't mess that up.
He led the league in touchdown passes.
Yeah, so don't mess that up because that's your best chance to win a Super
Bowl. He didn't have a bazillion interceptions. He actually had a very good year. Their offense was prolific this year.
Right.
CeeDee Lamb had a record-setting year.
Yeah.
I don't, and they have to re-sign him. They're stuck. So maybe they felt like, why change everything? Because if Dak regresses, then we're done.
Right. I would say, too, ask the Niners how they feel, Niners fans, how they feel about yesterday. If you don't have an elite quarterback or a quarterback playing at an elite level, you're at such a disadvantage when you're playing against one, you're not going to win. And that's what happened yesterday with them. So I think even Jerry's like, we need the best version of Dak if we're going to have a Super Bowl. So let's not screw up the offense and I'll try to, duct tape the defense together one more year.
They and the Ravens are sitting here today going, we missed an opportunity.
Oh, 100%.
They're the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the two. They blew it, and the Ravens really blew it. The Ravens upon real reflection, they blew it. I mean, just think about this a couple of weeks ago. One, they ran the ball 6 times. Who knows why, right? Like how ridiculously stupid that was that they did that. They just got out of themselves. They beat themselves with all these dumb penalties. They had a fumble at the 1-yard line. Lamar throws a terrible interception in the second half, and they almost won.
Yep.
They almost won anyway. After all of that, they almost won. I'm pretty convinced because they destroyed San Francisco when they played them. They'd be Super Bowl champions today.
Yes, correct.
They blew it. And then their staff's getting raided.
Uh-huh. Right.
Their whole defensive staff's gone.
Yes.
The whole thing, gone. McDonald's coaching in Seattle. Weaver's coaching in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the other guy? The other guy left, too. Someone else left. I think with McDonald.
With McDonald. Yeah, it sounds right.
Yeah. Oh.
Hardball's got his work cut out over there.
Oh, yeah. It's not going to be the same. Like, they missed it. Like, this one, if there was ever the window was wide open and you didn't jump through it, it was this one.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, you had your first home game against them, too. Like,
yeah.
Are you ever going to get the Chiefs again at home? You might not ever get that happening again.
They are going to acquire a big-time wide receiver in the offseason, period.
Yep, right.
Like, that's going to happen.
And then they're going to be fully operational.
And Kelsey said today he's coming back.
Yep, right.
And Andy Reid said he put that all to rest. They're all
right.
Where's he going?
Well, no, because they're all seeing the pathway of getting Brady status essentially. They all
why
see
would
the
you
pathway.
stop?
They're halfway there.
Well, why would you stop? Andy Reid's not going. What's he going to do?
Right.
He's not going anywhere. The first move in Philadelphia happened. Hassan Reddick has been allowed to go seek a trade.
Yep.
Of which I will raise my hand and say, we kind of need someone like that.
Sure. They ain't trading him in the division, though.
No, but if they end up cutting him,
yeah, of course.
then I think old Dan Quinn likes guys who do things like that he does.
That's right. Yes. Not to mention the theme of the offseason has been bring in everyone from the NFC East, apparently, for the All-Star team.
Correct.
So that would just be in line with what they've been doing.
The first hiring of the staff that's gotten a little bit of hand-raising going, what's that, is Bobby Johnson's the new offensive line coach. Bobby Johnson was most recently with the Giants, and previous to that was with the Bills. Mm-hmm. And obviously the Giants' offensive line has not been very good the last couple of years.
Right.
But to those who look at just the stats and see all the sacks that were given up and all this stuff, let me explain something to you, having covered them and followed it. Do you know how many injuries they had last year?
Right.
If you are judging this guy off of what they did last season, you're not being fair to him. Evan Neal, I'd have to look it up, played in maybe 4 or 5 games. Andrew Thomas missed the beginning part of the season and missed a lot of time. They had injuries across their line, and in the center of their line, they had a rookie who also missed time in the middle of their line.
Right.
Come on. Like, there's only so much you can do when both of your tackles get hurt. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And then Jones is out, and they had cutlets running around out there. And just remember, we had the worst defense in the league this year, and we sacked that guy 9 times. We sacked him 9 times with the worst defense in the league this year.
Right.
Because they couldn't block anybody. That was the second go-around where I'm like, I don't know how we're losing.
Right. Because I was saying that
was one of 5 games this year where I went, I don't know how we're losing. And we did. All of them. All of them.
Well,
how are we losing?
Things were haywire.
Haywire, yes. So I want to be like, not that I'm trying to be too homerish on this guy. You can't judge him off last year. You want to tell me how he did in Buffalo in the year before New York? Fine.
Yeah.
Like, I'll hear that stuff out. Apparently, there was some incident with him and Dayball, too. So we'll have to kind of figure that all out.
Something happening with offensive line coaches and head coaches in New York. What's up with that?
It wasn't the Joe Judge bare knuckle boxing.
That's right. Yeah. They got into a wrestling match.
Yes, a wrestling match with his offensive
line down,
coach.
literally.
Yes, threw down. I don't think it was that, but we had a little bit of this. But they said Dayball, though, last year got into with Martindale, too. So it sounds like that the whole thing up there was a little haywire.
It sounds like Dayball doesn't mind ripping into just about anybody, so that's just who he is.
So that one happened. Color me interested in Hassan Reddick if he's somehow available.
Sure.
We need that bad.
Right.
And then the other one is Schefter is already putting out there today that Mike Tomlin really likes Justin Fields, which makes a lot of sense.
That does make sense, yes.
Like, think about that one for a second. If he can get him for like a second-round pick, there's an answer for them.
He's the best quarterback on that roster right away.
Oh, that's not even close. I don't think we'll be deciding if Mason Rudolph is playing. I don't think so. And your boy Hands is done.
I was going to say your boy Hands.
Your boy, that's your boy. I said it from the get-go. Nope. I was like, nope on Hands. He's out.
That was an all-time team for you. They had Hands, your boy Mitch, and Mason Rudolph. That's your all-star. That's your all-star team.
I want none of them.
It's your all-hater team.
I had to come around on Mitch for about 3 weeks. You were eating
on Mitch for like a month.
I thought we were getting him. I'm like, oh, no. I was like, oh, God, I'm going to have to come around on Mitch.
It's been a year in Buffalo, and you thought he was the answer.
Listen, I had to come around on Wentz. I had to come around on Mitch. And then thankfully we didn't get Mitch. I didn't have to come around on Mitch.
Right back
I openly say right now I don't want Hands if he's available, because if they go get Fields, Hands will be available.
That's correct, yes.
I think.
Yeah, he definitely will, because Mason Rudolph's the backup.
Probably.
I don't know how you move on. Like, he's been all right in spot starts.
Or if you get Fields, maybe you even draft a young quarterback
you could
and
do that.
just put him in development.
Yeah, absolutely could do that.
I think you could do that. But the Mike Tomlin really likes Justin Fields thing. I believe it.
Yeah, I believe that too. Yeah.
I believe it. And go look at their division. You better go get a top-tier quarterback or you have no chance.
Well,
how are you going to win it?
That's right. Yes, exactly.
One of them's going to be really good. If not, 2 or 3 of them are going to be really good. You have no choice.
If anything, if you haven't learned anything from what the Chiefs have done now 2 years in a row, but in the whole Mahomes era, if you do not have an elite quarterback, you're dead.
Yeah.
You're dead on arrival in the Super Bowl when you play another one.
Listen,
the difference is huge.
Pittsburgh's had bad quarterbacking since Roethlisberger got hurt and really couldn't play anymore.
Right.
They hung on for dear life with him, but about 2 years too long, and then they went and got Hands. He's not it.
Right.
He ain't it. So much so that Rudolph's playing in the playoffs. And yet they still have a winning record every year.
Yes. Right.
And then people are complaining about Tomlin. Oh, my God. Are you kidding? We would die for a record like that with the quarterbacking we've had.
That's right.
So Justin Fields to Pittsburgh. If I'm Justin Fields, I actually want that to happen.
Yeah, so would I, because you and I talk about this all the time. Somehow the Steelers have the cheat code of drafting amazing wide receivers in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds for some reason.
You know, the coordinator there is now Art.
Oh, your boy.
Art.
Well, he doesn't like throwing to elite wide receivers, so it's a match made in heaven.
That's right. Pickens will never see the ball.
Everyone else will.
Fields
though.
will be fine.
Yeah.
Pickens will never see the ball.
That's right.
Ever.
They don't throw to any of they don't use their elite players.
Of course they don't. Why would they? All right, I'll be right back. Very much the show. ESPN 630 in Sports Capital. All right, let's get back into the Super Bowl a little bit here. Congratulations, Chase Young. Made a nice play early in the game.
Got a lot of playing time, actually.
Yeah, that whole he's going to get benched thing I thought was stupid.
I thought it was motivation,
though.
I thought it was motivation.
Sure.
I think somebody literally went up to him with the tablet in the NFC Championship game and literally was like, if you don't get your you-know-what together, you're not playing in 2 weeks. And that worked, I think.
They didn't play well. I was saying this in the playoffs coming into it. I go, their defense isn't playing well. They haven't had much of a pass rush. It's a problem. And they nearly lost the first 2 games. They could have lost to Detroit. They should have lost to Detroit. They could have lost to Green Bay, right? They needed to come back late in that one, too. They had to come back from both of them. And their defense wasn't particularly great coming into this. They were way better last night.
Yeah.
Way better. And I was happy for Chase to see him have a moment, like that. It doesn't. And I see a lot of people, there's like this, because he's a free agent, bring him back. Guys, that ship sailed.
Yeah. Guys.
It is.
That ain't happening.
I mean, he'd have to play for no money.
Right.
They're not on a big deal. And I'll be very interested to see what he gets on the open market.
Right.
I'm not rooting against him. I just, what he had to come back from with that knee. And it isn't about one play that went viral in the NFC Championship game that didn't look good. It isn't about that.
Yeah.
There were a lot of plays like that. They just didn't get kind of put out there publicly like this. And he doesn't play with that same ferocity on every play. Mm-hmm. And he did freelance a lot. And you got to be an impact player to make that kind of money. But we'll see. I mean, someone may look at the athleticism and go, give him a 2-3 year deal at a high number, and let's see how it goes for him. And I'm not rooting against him. I'm rooting for him. It's not here.
Yeah, right.
It's not.
Exactly.
And I don't think it's going to be there either. They've already paid Bosa and Fred Warner and Debo and Kittle and Trent, and McCaffrey. I don't see the money for some $20+ million a year. Another player like Hargrave's got money too. The cap will catch up to you at some point. They're very lucky their quarterback makes nothing at this point. I'll be interested to see if they change their mind about that.
Sure.
In the offseason, maybe they will. But I don't see Chase Young going back there either unless he's willing to do a very, low number with incentives or something like that. And then in that case, just having followed his career and see now he played in San Francisco, I think that's a bad idea for him. So I would take the guaranteed money wherever he can get it. It won't be here.
I don't think it's going to be San Francisco simply because I think it was a calculated decision by them to give Washington the 3rd round pick, knowing they were going to get a 3rd round pick back when he walks. So I think it was a calculated decision by them.
And that whole he's going to get benched. I never believed that. Why would you?
Yeah, right.
Of course you're going to put him out there.
Right.
And listen, he paid a dividend for them. He had a sack in the Super Bowl.
Yep, that's right.
That's why you gave up the 3rd round pick. Get you over the top. They took a shot on him and they got a good play out of him.
Yep.
Let's see. I didn't think the coverage of Taylor Swift was over the top. I thought it was fine.
No, not at all.
Right?
In fact, the best moment wasn't even in the broadcast. It was in-house. Did you see the video of her chugging the beer in-house? Did you see that one?
Yes, I saw her chugging
Like,
the beer.
that was
She got
even-
booed on that.
Yeah, I mean,
In the
whatever.
stadium, they booed her.
Whatever. I mean, elite crowd, I guess. I mean, I don't know why you booed her.
I mean, this is the state that changed their rules so that Donald Trump wouldn't even have to win a primary.
Yeah.
So, and considering what the news cycle was coming into it, booing her felt logical, actually.
Yeah, all right, whatever.
I don't know. It was like the football fans, like, get over it. Famous people go to the games all the time. We like that.
That's right. Yes.
I got a lot of people last night because we had a bunch of people at our house last night. And they were all asking me what I thought about it, like, expecting me to be football cretin who
Poo-poo
goes,
all over.
yeah,
Yeah.
get away. And I go,
Yeah.
do you know how many young girls are watching football now? They go, this is a good thing.
Yeah. The fact
This
that
is a good thing. I like anyone who thinks it's a bad thing doesn't understand like why we're in it. Like, I want more people in the tent watching the sport that I love. Like, this is not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
the fact that the NFL said that they want to go more international, and they've done that. They played in London. They played in Germany. They're going to go down to Brazil. What was the other one they announced? They're going to Spain, right?
Yeah,
Which I
next
saw
year.
all of you and the other
Let's
commanders beat with like,
Let's go.
let's do this. But here it is. They want to be more international, and the biggest pop star on the planet flew from Tokyo to make sure she was there for that game, whether she's dating a player or not. That's a massive deal, and you should just be happy that the league is getting bigger in ways that you couldn't even fathom. Essentially,
That's right.
So
Last night, one of the biggest ad campaigns featured Messi,
right,
the soccer star,
yes, exactly,
on the most watched thing on earth.
right,
The
exactly,
watch sporting event outside of the World Cup.
yes, correct, exactly.
This is not a bad thing. And I thought their coverage of it was fine. And if you didn't show her, you're doing a disservice to the millions of people who actually were looking.
Yeah.
Because every time they showed her, all the 14-year-old girls in my house were yelling Taylor.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Also, it was barely ever showing her for any more than like 2 seconds too. mean,
I
it
think
was
if they
very
did the
fast.
clock and someone I'm sure did it, it was probably about 40 seconds worth
Yeah,
of time.
I would agree.
And of course you're going to show. Why wouldn't you?
Right. I actually thought the pregame one was better because it was showing her and Ice Spice, and then you saw Jason Kelsey introduce himself to Ice Spice, which I was like, we're in a fever dream, guys.
Yep.
We have Jason Kelsey introducing him to Ice Spice and Taylor Swift. By the way, did you see his post-game antics, Jason?
I heard about it. I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't seen any of that yet?
No. Something about him. First he showed up dressed like Zach Galifianakis from The Hangover, which was too perfect.
Amazing.
By the way,
Right.
was amazing.
So I guess somehow he acquired a Chiefs luchador mask. And so there's this video. It's my favorite video of the night. Marshmello was playing at one of the clubs or whatever, and the camera pans over to Taylor Swift and Travis, like dancing, partying, kissing. Her song is being played over the loudspeaker, so it's this moment, whatever. And the camera pans over to Marshmello in his headgear, and next to him is Jason Kelsey just fist pumping, wearing a Chiefs luchador mask.
Yeah.
And it's just a fever dream. So I'm just saying, Jason Kelsey's living his best life right now.
Yeah, but he has become surprisingly a very important person in pop culture.
Yes,
Very.
100%.
I always knew he was a really, really good football player, but I didn't envision this. Even when he did the Mummers thing, I didn't envision him becoming like kind of a larger than life personality out of the NFL. I did not expect that.
What's happening with him, too, is something I didn't think would ever happen. You know, when the Capitals won the Stanley Cup, we've largely said for years and years now, no one's partied like they have. But here's Jason Kelsey, who got knocked out of the playoffs and has now partied his way into the tier that the Capitals partied.
Yes, but he didn't win. That's the weirdest part of the whole thing.
But he's the best Eagles player in, I don't know, 10 years? Like,
he might be the best Eagles player ever.
I wasn't going to say that, but like it might be. Like,
You'd have to go way back
Right.
on a couple people.
And then dresses up
So,
like the
like,
mummer. Like that's what I'm getting at here.
I'd have to ask
he's
an
allowed.
Eagles fan about this, but I'm sure he's top 5, and I'm not sure he's not the best one ever.
Off the top of your head, I'm trying to think who's better. Like
all-time better?
yeah, like it's just not.
It's not easy.
It's like Reggie White. Like
Reggie White.
it's like that's
Sure.
the only guy I can come up with.
Who's the famous linebacker from forever ago? There's a famous linebacker.
Jeremiah
from, like,
Trotter.
No.
It's
No, but like I'll have to ask Andy about this one. There's a famous Eagles linebacker from forever ago that's like
Right.
Hall of Famer that's like that. Sonny would have been, and he played his whole career there.
Brian Dawkins. We didn't say that one.
Brian Dawkins is a
probably
good-
right there.
Brian Dawkins, Reggie White. Harold
Chuck
Carmichael.
Bednarik?
Yeah,
Bednar?
Chuck Bednarik.
Bednarik, there
So
you go.
he's like an all-time like legendary great, like a Dick Butkus type.
Got it. Okay.
So he's one of them. Rocky.
Rocky.
Who's the invincible guy? Vince Papale.
Vince Papale. On the like generic list, it's Dawkins, Reggie White, Chuck Bednarik, Harold Carmichael, Donovan McNabb's on there, Randall Cunningham's on there.
Neither one of them I would put ahead of Jason Kelce.
Yeah, the list already fell off. There's some good linemen. I mean, of course, Jason Peters, Trey Thomas.
Yeah.
But still not even.
No.
They don't touch him. I mean.
No.
Yeah,
They don't have a lot of legends that have actually come through there.
They have, but they haven't won. Like, I'd put.
Well, look at the list.
Yeah, I mean.
Like, that's their list.
Yeah.
Like, we have way more legends than they do who've come through our organization through the years. Like, all-time greats like Bobby Mitchell, Art Monk, Darryl Green, John Riggins, Sonny Jurgensen, like Sammy Baugh. Like, we have all-time greats that played on our teams.
Yeah. They have Hall of Very Good.
Hall of Very Good.
Chuck
Bednarik is like he's like Dick Butkus back then, like all-time great.
Yeah. I'd say it's probably between Brian Dawkins and Jason Kelce. I think those are the two.
Of the modern era, for sure.
Yeah.
Harold
absolutely.
Carmichael, too.
Yeah.
Harold Carmichael was an amazing receiver. All right, let's see. What else do we got from the game? All right, so this is where it turned for me. When they got that interception, the 49ers to start the second half on the Chiefs side of the 50 and didn't score, I just went up and I go, oh, they're going to regret that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That was it.
Because then Mahomes went.
You just don't have a lot of opportunities.
Mahomes went God mode from that point on, essentially. Yes. I mean, it was.
When it flips on, it flips on. It's almost to the point where the only way he's going to lose is if someone on his team lets him down.
Yes.
Like they have to drop the pass, you know?
Correct.
Miss a block, drop the pass, fumble after the catch, like Zay Flowers did. Like, that's what has to happen to beat them now. It's like, you're not going to beat him.
Right.
You got to beat everybody else. You have no choice. He's Thanos, you're done. But everybody else you got a shot with because they're mortals. Like, that's it.
Right, exactly.
But when they didn't score there, I went, uh-oh. Purdy was getting paler by the minute.
Yep.
The weight of it was catching him.
That's why I said the Niners made the right decision to get the ball first. You don't let Purdy be the guy that has to make the comeback against Mahomes. You just don't.
Blocked extra point.
Special teams, man. Special teams killed them. Special teams actually
killed them. Turns out to be terrible.
Yeah, right.
I will say, though, the dude on the Niners who made 2 straight special teams plays, the one where he stopped the punt at the 1 and then clotheslined that guy on the next punt.
Who didn't fair catch. Yeah.
That guy just made himself a lot of money.
For sure.
All-pro Revo was jumping out of his skin at his Super Bowl party on that one.
That's right, yes.
That clothesline on the punt return was amazing.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty good, too. So that's what, I mean, to me, it was and that's what it is with the greats. You got to play perfect. And you need his supporting cast to mess up.
That's right.
Honestly, like their record this year and their struggles were about unreliable receivers. It had nothing to do with him. It was unreliable receivers. MVS dropping passes here. Kelce, falling in love and not being as engaged as he was for a little while. Boy, he woke up. Oh, yeah, on the Andy Reid thing. What the hell was that?
Yeah, I want to know what that was about.
So do I.
Because
they both blew it off really well.
Yeah.
That was weird.
It was like
he felt unhinged.
Well, yeah. And then did you see some of the other players? Like I think it was AJ Brown and 1 or 2 other black players were like, if one of us did that, that, it'd be a whole different ball game.
High crimes and misdemeanors on that one.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
So, and I was like, you're right. Like the optics of that would have been, a certain crowd would have flipped out quite a bit.
My other favorite one from last night too, and it doesn't matter now because it's all in the wash because they won anyway, was Mahomes actually missed a touchdown to Rashee Rice when he went towards Kelce, and they ended up kicking the field goal to send it to overtime, and Rice freaked out on the sidelines, and I was like, wow, I was like the rookie going, what are you doing to Pat Mahomes? And he was right.
Well,
I loved it. The play was designed. It wasn't just that he was open. It was designed to him. Mahomes, for one of the first times, forced something. And it did feel like, I want Travis Kelce to score game-winning touchdown in Super Bowls, what it felt like. And he forced it, and Rice is going, dude, we would have won if you just threw me the ball. It was designed for me, and I was actually open on the play, and you know it.
Their offense wasn't amazing through the playoffs, but the second half of the season, Rice really took off. Like he was the number 1 guy. But then in the playoffs, they went away from that.
I loved him in college when I saw his tape coming out.
The only thing I think of is if Was it Mahomes thinking it's the playoffs now? I'm going to go with my guy now because he didn't really do much in the playoffs, but the second half of the season, he was great. And so I think that was maybe some of his frustration being like, dude, I've been so good for the second half of the year and you're not using me. So
I did love, though, that he was like up in his face going like, you should have thrown it. And he was right. He had every right to say, because it wasn't just like a throw me the damn ball type of moment. It was the play was designed to me and I was open and you tried to force it over there. Now we're in overtime. What are you doing? I liked that. Yep. And the last thing was, did you see J.J. Watt's hair? Terrible.
Dude,
what is he doing? What did he do that for?
I made that commentary of
why did he do that?
Why did he look like an 8th grader going to the dance?
I felt like he had joined the Backstreet Boys. I didn't know what happened.
What are we doing
I
here?
did see a funny tweet from him, and he goes, if you change your hair, will you get comments? The answer is yes. It was pretty bad. I don't know. He had frosted tips.
I didn't understand what was going on there. How did CBS let that happen?
I don't know.
Because he's a good-looking guy.
Frosted tips.
The guy's built like a refrigerator, but it looks good. And
listen, I appreciate he gave it a shot, but whoever gave him that advice, bad idea. Terrible idea.
Howie Long is like, dude, I've had a crew cut my entire career. Learn from me. Like,
did you see? Was this real on the Nickelodeon cast? They put up a chyron like in the Nickelodeon stuff.
Yeah,
and it was next with Travis Kelce on the bench, and it said Taylor Swift's a boyfriend, and next to it said good at football.
I did not see that.
I couldn't tell if that was real or not, but it was because I wasn't watching the Nickelodeon cast of it.
Apparently, there was one joke that got posted to Twitter a little bit. Look it up when you get a chance. They showed Leonardo DiCaprio, in the crowd or whatever, and put the chyron up. And I guess somebody made a 25 joke.
Oh no!
Because he
on the Nickelodeon cast. Oh Lord!
Because one of them said something along the lines of Leonardo DiCaprio has a cap or something, and whoever the female announcer was like, "Yep, apparently 25." But didn't say 25 years old, just said 25.
All right.
So they were messing around on that broadcast a little bit too.
Better than Romo. Yeah. I'm getting texts about that now. There's some people mad at me that I think I went too hard at Romo in the early part of he didn't know the rules.
No, absolutely.
I'm sorry. I'm not going to defend him on that.
You and I have defended Romo.
I've actually defended him a lot this year. I actually agreed it was over the top. The last call was bad.
You and I have defended him pretty well.
He stepped on Nance really bad. That was to win the Super Bowl. You got actually being quiet there for both sides actually is what you're really supposed to do after the call is made, and then that was really bad. And the fact that he didn't know the rules, I'm sorry, I'm not going to defend him on that. You need to know the rule.
Correct.
It's the Super Bowl. You don't know the rules?
You and I have been pretty active on defending him.
Yes, I have been.
But he had to be criticized for what happened yesterday.
I think people have come too hard at him, but last night, I agree. And actually early, I felt like, because did you hear the directive that came out early?
No.
You need to calm down one?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
From the CBS Sports executives, you need to calm down.
Oh, God.
He's done. Watch.
Yeah. No, after last night,
Nance will be with somebody else next year.
100%.
Somehow, some way.
I'm wondering how he got carried, though. Was it that they figured out early on he really wasn't mainlining it and he was getting set up by the producers and stuff like that, and then he was just saying stuff off cuff? Because last night,
when he was first out, he was calling out the plays.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have gone, well, I could do that too when I'm first out, because you've seen it all. So you know what's coming.
Right.
And as time goes by, you can't lean on that as much anymore. And then the complaints started coming that he wasn't, following it the way that he should,
which was apparent last night. It came through finally.
Yeah,
because now I get it. I think it all came together last night because of the mess ups that he had.
J.J. Watt's hair was worse though. It was worse. All right, we'll be right back. Bram Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. I got to see a lot of the Capitals this weekend. I'm going to talk about them for a moment. I got to watch them on the flight home against Boston, who almost inexplicably really no-showed against Washington. It was weird, actually. And even Sean McDonough was over and over saying it. He's like, I don't know what's going on today. They were just completely out of sorts. And at one point in the second period, he even just out loud said, he goes, they can't wait to get this game over with.
Yeah.
So the Caps were given not that they didn't play well, but they were given a gift by a really good team who just didn't show up on Saturday. This happens
a few times over the course of a season where you show up and the other team just doesn't, and you are on your game and the other team just is not.
Yeah.
And that happened to happen against one of the best teams in the league on their home ice in the afternoon, by the way. The Cats are notorious for not playing well in the afternoon. They just don't. They're not that good. And it was, I think Spencer Carberry called it their most complete game of the season because they just locked everything down. Like,
I think those guys weren't trying very hard.
No,
it was weird.
Like we, like we do a segment for the radio broadcast of our save of the game. And like, I didn't have one because they didn't even have a good chance.
That's
yet
right.
Lindgren got a shutout. Like, it was funny.
They had 8 shots through 2.
Yeah.
8. And 3 of them were like not really shots on goal. They were like dump-ins that just were easily handled. So they really had like 1 or 2 actual scoring chances.
Right.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
Like not that I'm complaining. They needed it. And then yesterday, what a terrible outcome. Like
that was a heartbreaker. Like a legitimate heartbreaker.
They had a giveaway with just a few seconds left in overtime that allowed Vancouver to score. They were the better team again yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And my just general takeaway from watching them yesterday, because I expected them to lose after, turning around and playing a good team again, but they were right there. They could have won. They had way more chances.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the finishers they used to have.
Correct. Yeah. 100%.
So, this wasn't for a while there, they couldn't get opportunities. Yesterday, though, they got plenty of them.
Right.
I'm just accustomed to seeing this team finish, and they kind of don't have that right now. So that was, I don't know if alarming is the right word. It's like a new normal. It was hard to see. It was hard to watch. And then they got the wrong result because they were the better team yesterday, and they should have at least got to a shootout. It was just a terrible turnover in overtime that blew a point.
Right.
That's all.
And Spencer Carberry did not tear into McMichael that bad because McMichael was the one who had the turnover. And he just said he's going to learn from it because that's what his mantra has been. He's a younger player. And look, here's what it is. This team scores 2 goals a night. You don't know where they're coming from. But
they could have had 5 yesterday. They could have. That's the thing. Yesterday was one of the times I was like, wow, they played really well, and they just were on the wrong end of it.
And that's what I'm getting at. It looks like they could score 5, but they only scored 2. Interesting one on overtime, and I don't know if Carberry was asked about it or if he will be asked about it. He shortened the bench in overtime. Alex Ovechkin didn't take a shift in overtime, which I think is actually the right call. Ovechkin's skating has been questionable late. He's been way better, by the way. 5-game goal scoring streak now for this guy. It's happening. Like, he's finally...
One's an empty netter, but go on.
Sure, but either way, he wasn't even getting those earlier. So the fact that he's heating up now, too, dragging guys into these games, great for all of us. Because honestly, if he's scoring and they're playing close games, that's all we can really ask for. But he shortened the bench, didn't play him. I expect him to be asked about it at some point.
Coming up here in just a few minutes is a debut here on ESPN 630.
That's right.
Callow has his own show these days.
Yes.
Not just filling in for Tony
That's
anymore,
right.
or me, or whatever we make you do.
Work.
Whatever we make you do that's really outside your job.
The utility man. That's pretty much what it is.
You want to tell everybody about your show?
Yeah. So favorite name ever. It came up. I came up with it myself. It's called The Line Change. Little hockey pun, little gambling pun there. We're going to talk Caps every day and day after. As you know, we do it on this show, but I'm going to do it for a little bit longer. I'm going to give you some gambling stuff at the end of every show because we don't really talk about that much on the station. And as you know, I've dabbled in that a little bit more lately, especially in the NBA.
All Clippers all the time.
Do love some West Coast games. Little teaser for you.
Yeah.
Daniel Gafford does play against the Wizards tonight, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I've got some that. I think you can make some money tonight off Daniel Gafford.
You got some news on that.
Yes.
All right.
100%. So, yeah, can't wait to get it started. Appreciate all the kind words everyone has dropped today. Appreciate you putting it out there as well.
Yes,
so,
congratulations on your new show.
I'm
very
Appreciate
excited for you. I'll be listening on my ride home.
There you go.
And I'll see you all tomorrow at 3. And we got our out music again because we're now no longer thinking like we're still here at 5 o'clock live.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, neither do I. All right, see you tomorrow. Bram and Callow, ESPN 630 Sports Capital.